For the purposes of this content, best shall be defined as most preferred by Peter Franson when compared to a limited sample of alternatives. Hey, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here to present you my top 10 best movies, geek movies anyway, of 2018, as well as two other types of movies I want to recognize. One would be my legacy movie of 2018, which is a movie that I watched and enjoyed for the first time in 2018, but that wasn't released that year. And then also my most thought-provoking movie of 2018. So let's not waste any more time. Here we go. My legacy movie for 2018 has to be Europa Report. Every year for a while now at Christian Geek Central, we've celebrated the Summer of Free, where I try to highlight some free entertainment options, and that's where I discovered this movie on a site that was, for a period of time, making it available for free. I'd seen previews, trailers for Europa Report, you know, closer to when it came out. It was a movie that I just never quite got around to seeing, and I'm so glad that I checked it out this last summer. It's got a solid ensemble cast, and it uses that sort of imperfect in-story cameras to tell the story, kind of like in a movie like Chronicle. So all the cameras that you're seeing the story through are in the world, security cameras, stuff like that. And because they're in the world, they're not set up to give you the perfect view of everything. So details are obscured, and I'm leaning forward. Did I see what I just thought I saw? You know, so there's that great fear of the unknown that's heightened by the lack of ability to see everything perfectly. There's an emphasis on the fragility of human life. They really play up that these are astronauts in space and like they're just, you know, inches away from the cold death of vacuum, you know. And there's fear of the unknown that's played up. It's this great sci-fi horror hidden gem for me that I'm so glad I found during the Summer of Free. Number 10. Venom just barely makes its way onto my top 10 list. I didn't connect with the story as much as I wanted to. I wanted them to invest in character motivations more strongly, but I really felt like Tom Hardy, his performance as Eddie Brock, really elevated, I suspect, the material that was already there. And so, for his performance alone, I felt comfortable putting Venom on my top 10 list. Number 9. Hereditary is like, oh man, I really wrestled with whether or not it belonged on this list or not. It's a very striking movie to me. It's supernatural horror drama. Is the best way I would describe it, with really good emphasis on the drama. It's not just suspenseful, it is truly dramatic. It's so heavy and grounded in human tragedy. I felt like the performances by all the cast members were just outstanding. It's powerful to me as a drama and realistic enough in portraying researched real-world occultism that it made me kind of sad watching it, to just think, wow, there are people that really invest their lives in this kind of world and these kinds of ideas, and man, it was disturbing. I wouldn't describe this movie as fun. It's hard to recommend to anyone. I don't plan on ever watching it ever again, but it was so striking in its effect and powerful in its tragic drama that it makes its way onto my list. Number 8. Cloverfield Paradox. This one doesn't have, you know, really innovative, crazy new concepts, but it's got a pretty nice ensemble cast, some nice character drama moments, and it's sci-fi space, you know, thriller with body horror and gore and stuff like that, and some, you know, interesting sci-fi concepts, and so, hey, I'm game. Number 7. Avengers Infinity War. If you would have asked me 2 years ago if a Marvel movie would be anywhere on this list in a couple years, I would have said, yeah, probably not. There was a period there where I just was really not interested in Marvel movies because they were going for the same kind of light tone and didn't seem to want to allow any weight, any really drama into the movies, and that's something that's really important to me, even when you mix in humor. And I felt like Avengers Infinity War finally, once again, was giving breathing room for character moments that fed the drama, and it went to heavy places now and then and allowed the audience to stay there without quickly breaking the tension with some bad joke. I also thought, just on the more traditional things that you go to superhero movies for, I thought that they used Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in really satisfying ways, both in terms of their characters and involvement in the story, and then also in the action. There was a generous visual style in what could have been many quick throwaway moments that there was just attention and care and thought given to. So it was just like wonderfully, the action scenes were wonderfully thought out. There's still so much spectacle bang for your buck, I think, in this movie, and I would suspect on repeat viewings as well. This was a really nice treat, and I think I just might be starting to like Marvel movies again.
Number 6.
Please Stand By. This was a great, touching drama for me. I thought it had wonderful, grounded performances that were filled with subtext, probably not on the actual script page. I almost never saw, like, actors making choices while I was watching this movie. I believed in these characters. I could also relate to a degree from experiences how difficult it can be to try and give grace and patience to someone with mental or emotional problems that kind of lashes out or becomes unknowingly abrasive toward the people who are bending over backwards for them. There's also tons of geek appeal and really charming humor for me in this movie. There are geek movies on this list that I enjoyed more, but this is such a unique standout to me from all the entries on my list this year. I highly recommend Please Stand By.
Number 5. Boom, mother trucker!
The Death of Superman, the animated movie. Even though we tend to talk about our opinions of movies using very objective terms, I was reminded once again watching this movie of really how subjective our feelings on movies are and how dependent they are on what we bring with us in our personality, in our mood, in our expectations. All of that has a big effect on whether or not we enjoy something, and that was true for me watching The Death of Superman. I think the first few minutes of this movie, I was not connecting with it because I was really in my mind comparing the script to a live-action film script. But somehow along the way, early on, I started comparing it to the Bruce Timm DC animated universe, you know, like the Batman animated series, the Superman animated series, the Justice League animated series, all those from like the 90s and onward. And once I was kind of like comparing it to that, then it was really glasses half full in a huge way for me on this. I appreciated the heart and the emotional weight of this movie when compared, you know, to those other Bruce Timm experiences. And they so economically used their time and adapted the original story about the death of Superman and his fight with Doomsday. They adapted it and removed the cumbersome continuity elements, and they brought in more top-tier Justice Leaguers. You know, some people may not remember that in that story, it was like Justice League Europe or something like that. It was a lot of like third-tier, and nobody knows these people, Justice League members. And retelling this story, they brought in like the Big Five or the Big Seven or whatever it is, you know. And Clark in this story is wrestling with telling Lois his secret identity, and that arguably feels to me like the A-plot because of how much attention they gave to it. There's some great attention also given to developing Clark as a character and his relationship with Lois. I felt the danger and the stakes of Doomsday and the threat he represented more than ever before. And when I say ever before, I mean in any Doomsday story I've ever read, in any animated thing I've seen him in, any movie. Well, maybe even more than in Batman vs. Superman. And certainly including the original story in the comic book pages of the death of Superman. He was deadly. He was straight up killing people brutally. I don't even think Doomsday was doing that in Batman vs. Superman. He was straight up killing people, and I was just like, oh my gosh, someone has got to stop this thing, you know? So I was really feeling that, and it was all the more urgent, all the more satisfying when he was able to be stopped, even though it ends tragically, as you can imagine from the title of the story. But I enjoyed this one so so much that I would say this is now, in my mind, my definitive version of this story. You know, the story of the death of Superman in his fight with Doomsday has been told at least once in the comics and then reinterpreted maybe through flashbacks, you know, now and then. There's been another animated attempt at telling this story. There's been kind of like some teases of telling a version of this story in other like animated forms and stuff. This is, even compared to the original published comic book, this is now my definitive version of the death of Superman.
Number 4.
Kin was a little movie that maybe you missed, maybe you didn't even hear about, but I really enjoyed it. It's I would describe it as a grounded urban drama injected with repeated massive bursts of sci-fi action that are made all the more powerful for their lack of frequency. It's a character-driven, emotionally weighty story. It's that rare gem of geek genre movie that could stand toe-to-toe, I think, with mainstream dramas just on its dramatic merits alone. It focuses on a child lead character, but it's one who is not overpowered or overly smart and clever as in, you know, many children's movies. It's a movie that is ultimately about family and the difficulties of familiar relationships that we're kind of stuck with, that are built into our lives, and we have to figure out, what am I going to do with these relationships? How am I going to handle my responsibilities to my family members? So I really enjoyed Kin.
Number 3.
A Quiet Place. Really, for me, an enjoyable, a very intense monster movie that combines practical and CG effects to represent this monster that is often wisely obscured in order to build tension and fear of the unknown, which I really appreciate. It's very character-driven, with actor performances that are often completely subtextual, because there is often no talking in this movie, since any noise attracts these deadly alien creatures really quickly and even from far away. It's emotionally heavy for me, especially maybe as it leverages the universal parental fear of having something sudden and horrible take the life of your child. But the threat in this movie is fantastical. It's not a real-world threat. I think if I watched a movie, a drama, where a child's life was suddenly, viciously lost or taken, or that where there was that threat looming, I think I could, with my temperament, could come away from it and just kind of be down and kind of like be thinking about all the possible what ifs that could happen to my family and my life. It just wouldn't take me to a good place. But because the danger is fantastical, instead I just went home wanting to give my boys extra tight hugs, you know. So that's a really special horror movie that can do something like that for me.
Number 2.
Black Panther. Wow. This was a great experience for me, a surprisingly great experience. It has a cast of characters with diverse personality types. It's a mashup of ancient tribal aesthetics with sci-fi tech. It has a story that had room for both humor and some drama. This was such a great mix of elements in so many different ways that resulted in a movie that uniquely stands out from other Marvel movies for me. I loved the visual designs and how they managed to convey gadget concepts without explanatory dialogue of like, this gadget does this and this is how it does it and stuff like that. And despite the eye candy action fest that this movie frequently indulges in, I felt the stakes, the danger felt real to me. The stakes felt high, something I'd been missing for a while in the average Marvel flick that leans too heavily on comedy at the expense of dramatic tension. I'm so happy that this movie did well. I went in not caring about this third-tier Marvel character, and I left the theater wanting a sequel.
Number 1.
Upgrade. Wow. Oh my gosh. I almost want to tell you to just go watch my review of this so I can, at greater length, just kind of gush about this movie. It's a creative mashup of sci-fi, superhero, revenge flick, and horror that surprised and delighted me just on like multiple levels. It philosophically treats AI the way I prefer for AI to be treated, and I won't say anything more about that. And also gives some commentary about our relationship to technology and our tendency to overindulge in how we use and immerse ourselves in technology. There are even hints of very subtle pro-theism, as belief in God is associated with a noble character in one case, and it's also a novelty from a better time in another case. It's got fish out of water humor, which I really enjoy. It's very character-driven. It's serious and tragic at times, but with shocking dark humor at other times. The combat scenes are just like savage and artfully performed at the same time by Logan Marshall Green, who uses his body in ways that make me believe he's being fluidly controlled by a machine with just brutal efficiency. The action scenes have really creative camera work that you're better off just seeing than having me try to explain to you what they do with the camera there. The pace also respectfully slows down now and then to allow for some weighty human drama, which I really appreciate, even in the midst of all the great action. The script also goes in unexpected directions with an immensely satisfying ending for me, though I suspect an ending that will challenge many other viewers as well. Man, really, really, really enjoyed Upgrade. Finally and briefly, my most thought-provoking movie for the year was Please Stand By, about an autistic woman who is wanting to compete in a scriptwriting contest for Star Trek, and that's kind of like the geek hook. There's lots of like geek stuff surrounding that, but this is really a wonderful human drama, and as I mentioned before, it just reminded me of what it's like to endeavor to have patience for someone who doesn't realize how abrasive they're being. It also challenged me to consider, how am I maybe coming across in negative ways that I don't realize as I'm interacting with others. There's just a lot of good that can come out of seeing this movie. I think even if you don't have any, if autism doesn't have any relevant connections in your day-to-day life, I think this movie is so worth seeing. I think it's actually good. It would be a really good thing for anyone to go and watch. So highly recommend for multiple reasons, both for dramatic purposes and also I think it can be a character building experience for the viewer to go and see Please Stand By. Those are my thoughts on my best and most thought-provoking movies of 2018. I'd love to hear about what your favorite or most thought-provoking geek movies were this year. And then, of course, I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.